Number 20 in the 42 Ideas on Leadership is the book Building Agreement, Using Emotions as You Negotiate. This was written by Roger Fisher and Daniel Shapiro in 2005. The first element is that we have to be aware of the danger of emotions in a negotiation. That if you do not take into account the emotions, they can create problems between the people negotiating, they can distract from the issues, they can break down the negotiation because people are so angry possibly that they cannot continue negotiating, and also that your emotions can be used to manipulate you in a negotiation. One of the key ideas in this book, Building Agreement, is that we cannot stop having emotions any more than we can stop having thoughts. The challenge is learning to stimulate helpful emotions in those with whom we negotiate and in ourselves. The very first page of the book. They then go on to develop the ideas that you cannot stop having emotions. And you can't ignore emotions either. It wouldn't work. The emotions affect your body, they affect the way we think, they affect our behavior. Even dealing directly with emotions can be difficult because there's so many and they can have a knock-on effect. However, we can start thinking about our core concerns. The 5 core concerns, appreciation, affiliation, autonomy, status, and role, they're common to almost all negotiations. And instead of having to deal with all of the individual emotions, perhaps scores of individual emotions that may arise throughout a negotiation, we try to create a strategy to deal with people's core concerns. They're human wants that are important to almost everybody in almost all negotiations. So if we deal effectively with these 5 core concerns, then we will be able to engender positive emotions in the negotiation. The first one is appreciation. Now, we ignore this concern if we feel that our thoughts, our feelings, or actions are devalued, and if we make other people's thoughts, feelings, or actions feel devalued. However, we appreciate this core concern when we feel that our thoughts, our feelings, or actions are acknowledged as having merit. Now, there are 3 ways of appreciating on somebody else in a negotiation. The first is understanding a person's point of view. The second is finding merit in what the other person thinks, feels, or does. And the third way of appreciating is communicating your understanding through words or actions. However, and they're very clear to point this out in the book, just because you appreciate their point of view, just because you try to understand it, does not mean that you agree with it. Second area is affiliation. This is when people feel that they're being treated as an adversary and kept at a distance. Well, this is not where you do not take into account this concern of affiliation. However, when you do take into account, it's where you're treated as a colleague or you treat them as a colleague. It's much easier to get a successful negotiation when people have a greater feeling of affiliation. There's 2 ways to do this. The first is structural connections, and the second one is personal connections. The first one, structural connections, is on the basis of when you belong to the same group, to the same structure, when you're both members. So therefore, by emphasizing commonalities and emphasizing the fact that you both belong to a common group, this helps this area of affiliation. Personal connections these are the ties that bind you to somebody else. So by speaking about personal matters and by reducing the personal distance a little bit, this also helps to create affiliation. Autonomy is 2 areas. First of all, expanding your area of control, your area of autonomy, so that regardless of your level of authority, you can always maybe brainstorm or you can make suggestions. This is a way of increasing your level of autonomy in a negotiation. The other area is that you have to avoid impinging on other people's autonomy. Before you start to force them into taking a decision or negotiating in any area of your life, they recommend using the ICN system. The ICN system is informing, consulting, or negotiating. So what you do is you decide on each issue whether you should decide on your own and then inform them, consult with others before you make the decision, or negotiating. And by following this strategy, it helps you avoid impinging on other people's feeling of autonomy. The 4th area is status. Now, their recommendation is that we all have high status in some areas of our life. maybe as a parent, or as a brother, or as a friend, or as our workplace, or some area of our life, we all have high levels of status. As a result of this, we shouldn't be competing with others in terms of status. We should accept who we are, and we should make sure that we feel confident about our level of status, and then we respect other people's status, and we don't worry necessarily about their attacks on our status. This is the advice given in this area of this concern. And the final one is your role. This is more about your individual role rather than the other person's role, but there are two areas. The conventional role that we play would be if you're a doctor or a customer, maybe a manager or even a scientist. Your temporary roles, well, this is where people have more power to choose. These temporary roles would be you're a talker or a listener, you may be a joker, a victim, a facilitator, evaluator. These are temporary roles that you may play in the negotiation, and you're freer to choose which role you're going to do. What they do recommend is that you appreciate the other's conventional and temporary roles. And when it comes to your own role, you should try and make it as fulfilling as possible. To make a job, a role fulfilling, it needs a clear purpose, and it should be personally meaningful, and it should fit with who you are, not who you pretend to be. These are the 5 core concerns, and by developing a strategy for these 5 core concerns, it is easier to control the emotions in a negotiation, as opposed to trying to adapt to each new emotion that arises in the negotiation. These core ideas and many more tips and suggestions are in the book Building Agreement Using Emotions as You Negotiate by Roger Fisher and Daniel Shapiro, published in 2005. That's number 20 in our 42 Ideas on Leadership.